Thank you.
So yeah, everything that you're saying is fantastic. You mentioned, for example, the collection of IP. You mentioned, for example, the cooperative structure, the cultural governance frameworks, and essentially this collaboration across a network of tech entrepreneurs. And the beautiful thing about this technology is that you can do that in the digital realm essentially seamlessly in a fully scalable way, non-censorable way, you name it. Just to give you a quick glimpse from the beginning. So what we have is different layers of tech that are supporting the socioeconomic layers, and foundational layer is essentially currency that is by design. So I think, as you mentioned, like when we succeed is when Africa is no longer exporting bananas and cacao. All of these extractive ways of doing businesses are first and foremost a way of the monetary systems. First of all, this sort of whole IMF central bank control system where the wealth is extracted by a currency is like the core of what we need to resolve. Totally. And that's why we created a currency that is exactly the opposite of an extractive system. It's a regenerative system in which the users, in this case, your communities in Ethiopia, are the shareholders of the system, and they decide where the value is going. So essentially, it's also a integrated DAO where, for example, the local entrepreneurs in your program would be able to decide, okay, these are other entrepreneurs in this other town that we would like to support them. And that could be done from regenerative agriculture to energy systems to education, you name it. And essentially what this is the world's first better free platform. So you can really create business models that are able to create value, that don't need to have this sort of extractive system where you're charging fees, where you're selling data, or any present monetization strategy. It's all about if a technology can create value, the citizens, the users can attribute a value to that. For example, from the numbers of users, they get a shareholding of the entire economy, and that can be already programmed in that an app or a technology receives value for value created. You have also the layer of better than free transactions. So what we've done is essentially created a financial system where the surplus is distributed within all the users. So essentially, imagine like PayPal. If you were a user of PayPal, but you were a direct shareholder, and at the end of each month, or what we have is mainly the lunar cycles, the aggregate of the collective created wealth goes back to all the users for their contributions. So instead of being charged fees for using your money, it rewards you for its use. And then all of this can really be leveraged, layered towards creating a healthier ecology, financing all the things that are in a market failure. Obviously, what you mentioned, the culture, the nature, the spirit, the entrepreneurship, all of that kind of has been just segmented to this profit extraction model that is no longer feeding our people. And that obviously creates a healthier economy because you're creating a good foundation. We're also right now experimenting with concepts around universal basic, or not universal basic, universal earned income, which goes a step forward. So it's not necessarily just giving money for people who are not doing anything. It's really providing a for allowing people to be entrepreneurs and doing what they love most. So that really also shifts the mindset of people. And right now we're kind of working across the globe to really harmonize that in Seeds. So we're saying, okay, what is a universal earned income, for example, in your case, in Ethiopia compared to Guatemala, and how we can harmonize that, labor is valued holistically across the board. And then the concept of really true democracy or governance is also what we're leveraging with tokenizing the voice and addressing all of these other problems that are in our current financial systems. And essentially what we designed is a minimum viable society. it into a ecosystem of apps. We have a wallet where you can transfer your wealth in real time without any costs, and instead of costs, you're rewarded by it. We're building marketplaces where these communities can exchange with one another using these currencies. Also, a place where people can connect and exchange ideas and also collaborate. And last but not least, the governance. So essentially, the co-op, where the co-op members are deciding how to allocate their resources or manage their treasuries in the most effective way.
Mm-hmm.
So this is kind of how it looks.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what we've launched essentially 2 years ago that I mentioned. And right now, as we speak, people are downloading it all across the globe and already requesting their ideas in terms of, hey, I am a regenerative agriculture in Kenya, for example, and I'm requesting 100,000 seeds to grow my mango plantation and make it regenerative. Then every member across the world votes in favor or against. And we know that as long as they're creating value for nature and planet, it's something that is going to have yields in more holistic terms. And this layer is what we've already been kind of experimenting. And then this second layer is what then connects and creates this more contextualized layer for trust building, which is the DAO. And this DAO is also very unique because we've also been using this for the last 4 years to build seeds. Mm-hmm. So essentially, seeds is
the first product of itself.
The first product of itself, and essentially Haifa DAO is already a distributed organization, similar to Bitcoin. Like, we don't even need a legal framework anymore. We've created already now a few legal frameworks in different jurisdictions for fundraising, but technically it's just software that sits in the air that cannot be censorable. And right now, for example, a lot of the investments that we've been receiving, we transform it to digital currencies, and we're able to distribute it to all our members. So right now we have around 80 members across the globe who are building all of this in a distributed way, in a very efficient and lean style. So, and now this Haifa platform is right now turned to be one of our major products.
Okay.
This it's kind of like surprises because we didn't, our main focus was seeds, and all of us created this DAO, which is right now state-of-the-art technology and really going up in valuation tremendously. And what we're doing is essentially contextualizing this tool for a multi-tenant system. So that means that, for example, any organization or any village or city or nation state or can use these tools to self-organize around shared purpose. And this is how it looks. So essentially in this platform, if you have access to internet, you can join an organization. For example, in your case, it could be like an entrepreneur organization that already has a nice business model, and they're already kind of sharing roles for expansion, or also a cross-pollination. You could have a functional IP of an organization in one village, and you want to replicate that same structure in another village, and you can already kind of have that programmed. At the same time, what we're also doing is this whole concept of bioregionalism, where we're kind of weaving geographical areas together, but first building that layer of trust and coherence around culture and geography, and then as in this paradigm, every human kind of adds value, then it becomes more efficient and to grow together. You can then also, other organizations can add and contribute with their full forms of capital, whether it's human resources, whether it is finance, whether it is intellectual capital. All of that can be tokenized and programmed into the layer to have equity into the whole cooperative. So the whole region of fractional ownership and decentralized payroll is very, very interesting. And this is just kind of like an overview of how you see where organizations are signing up and allocating themselves to bioregions and then really contributing towards that's going on, which is in our case the regeneration of land and people. Relevant to you here, you see UCI, Universidad para la Cooperación Internacional in Costa Rica, and Senamiki is also a Costa Rica organization. And yeah, and in Costa Rica, we have to send you a lot of material, but there's incredible things happening in that. Right now we have like a big push for the Mesoamerica bioregion, which already is kind of aiming to raise the borders already from southern Mexico to Panama. So all of this integration is slowly starting to happen.
Cool. Wow. So I mean, this sounds, as you said earlier, perfect. As total match with with our intentions. The question, so I can see a world where this is being used and people can live by using seeds as a currency. The transition phase might be difficult. There's I can see myself using it. And yourself. We have sources of fiat that can buy us our food for if we have to buy our food for somebody who doesn't use seeds. Yeah. But how do you manage the transition for somebody who's really embedded in the traditional fiat power structure system into seed?
That's a very on-point question, and that's exactly what we're right now confronting and finding very clever ways to solve it. And I think the best way to answer it is to give you a concrete example.
Yeah, please.
Like, for example, here in Lake Atitlan in Guatemala, where we are, we have a typical case of a beautiful sacred site in a gorgeous location that is a sacred site for the communities and for a lot of international communities that arrive there. It's fundamental for the livelihood, but at the same time, it's suffering from all of the things that are now far too common across the world: deforestation, agrochemical overuse, erosion of arable soil, ecosystem collapse, you name it. This is, for example, a picture of the algal bloom from the pollution taken from above that results, and it's essentially the water is in danger of becoming, and the whole ecosystem could collapse. And the challenge is, how do you give value to this meta layer where you can really incentivize people to transition to a healthier way? So, for example, what we're doing here is we're creating roles around the regeneration of the basin, where we have brought in all organizations together and said, okay, what is our vision for development that takes into account the cultural needs, the natural needs, and things, and what roles do we need to get there? So, for example, we identified here the role of regenerative entrepreneurs, transition away from, regenerative agriculturalists and regenerative entrepreneurs, where we provide a universal earned income in seeds for their contribution. And like you're saying, like sometimes people are like, okay, what is seeds? Can I go to my marketplace and buy it? Yes, you can, especially if people start already seeing the value. But in many other cases, you can't. So what we're doing is also this co-op mechanism that you guys are building and that we have here in a digital form is essentially a venture cooperative, a digital venture cooperative that also becomes a vehicle for collaborative impact investment. So what we're also doing is showcasing that with very little resources, essentially purely software, you can do a iteration of a whole ecosystem and make it profitable, because it's a whole new way of really creating value in this meta layer. And what we do is essentially create a liquidity pool that is also managed by the cooperative, where now essentially the co-op is a bank. So you're able to also create, for example, in each community, a little pawn shop where people can go and trade their seeds into fiat based on how much liquidity pools or like how much liquidity is available in each pool. And then we have like different incentives, for example, where every person can exchange up to a certain amount of their seeds per month, so to say, in order not to do it all at once and create different incentives for them to save money. And the beautiful thing about seeds is that in its original intention, it's supposed to be appreciating. So people are then realizing, oh, okay, wow, this new form of digital money, even though I don't see it and it's something perhaps using for me, then more valuable to save and more valuable to use within the network, because then the wealth is kept within the cooperative. So it also becomes this sort of like financial awareness mechanism.
So that's, but that's okay. I understand the motivation behind appreciation. But what I've seen around local currency systems is that optimizing towards velocity is usually better, and any type of appreciation incentivizes hoarding.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And there's two things in the seeds design that we have. So seeds is designed as a high velocity currency. So essentially, the more you exchange, more share of the harvest you receive. And that's in two phases.
I got it. Okay. Got it. Because you're redistributing the surplus.
Yes.
You can make that a function of your participation in the transactions, and therefore it can be of higher benefit for the individual to spend more into the system, because then you earn more back.
Especially seeds. Fiat doesn't have that.
Yeah.
But that's also then and when you have both, when you say you give people the opportunity to exchange seeds for fiat to cover the things that the seeds economy is not able to buy yet, for example, fuel and things that are already degenerative by nature. But then they also have that other high velocity access to a more value, more voice currency. So it has kind of like best of both worlds, and it helps to bring that awareness of what sound money could really be and what money is. So then people start opting more and more for a regenerative financial system and less for fiat.
One concern that we have is around the tech that's used. So in Guatemala or the America or Mesoamerica, Latin America, in some areas it's pretty similar to Africa, where the distribution of the necessary high tech and connectivity is not at a point where you could reliably access something like this. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, there's multiple layers to that, and that's a very important point. We see that here. For there's huge hurdles towards access to a smartphone, for example, or there's even hurdles to access to internet. We're solving that in many ways. It's also an ongoing process. So, for example, for the Africa context, we have right now, I'm building up with a partnership with a group that already does, for example, similar to M-Pesa, that you can actually combine the blockchain transaction to feature phones in a smaller ways that are a little bit less secure, but you can still do it. So right now we're working on that integration. Another layer is right now we're partnering with technology companies like mobile phone companies that are already willing to provide phones for these communities that don't have access. So for example, we have this Ion Sigma in Finland that's already doing this huge campaign with refurbishing mobile phones and making them accessible to entrepreneurs in Cameroon, in Ghana. Another layer is, for example, depending on the bioregion, we are able to create a partnership or a business partnership with the telecom providers that they can buy airtime with seeds or with currency. We can even using our co-op funds, our treasury. Another layer is
interesting.
Another layer is last mile connectivity. There's a whole bunch of technologies there. Right now we have also one of our exciting partnerships is the threefold network. I'll write it into the chat, but it's the world's largest decentralized internet grid. So we already have really powerful business cases where we can actually leverage this ecosystems to bring about decentralized internets into communities that become another layer of data sovereignty.
Beautiful.
So that's also what I'm really excited about, because as soon as you start piercing through, as soon as you do this, decentralize the financial system, what that immediately implies is access to finance for all the decentralized solutions, whether it is education, whether it is energy, whether it is food, whether it is information, you name it. So what this really means is the rural renaissance, where now all these communities that have been abandoned because finance is centrally located in the powerful capitals of the Western Europe now can be accessible in any rural village too.
Beautiful. Okay. So where do we go from here? If we say we want to start building on top of Haifa in Ethiopia, what would need to happen?
Yeah, I think we definitely need to